Whether thou art a ghost that hath come from the earth, or a phantom of night that hath no home, or one that lieth dead in the desert, or a ghost unburied, or a demon, or a ghoul, whatever thou be until thou art removed, thou shalt find here no water to drink. Thou shalt not stretch forth thy hand to our own. Into our house enter thou not. Through our fence break through thou not. We are protected, though we may be frightened. Our life you may not steal, though we may be scared to death.
Welcome to Scared to Death, Creeps, Peepers, Roberts, and Annabelles. I'm Dan.
Hello, Dan. I'm Lynze.
Hello, Lynze.
Hello, sir.
The spooky season is for sure here now. Welcome to October.
Happy Spooptober.
Lynze has a couple quick things to say, and then we're off and running.
Yes. Okay, so have you gotten your tickets for our annual live Halloween show? Have you submitted your story submission to Haunting Hooks? Not sure what the heck I'm talking about? Well, be sure to check our episode description for all the details on the things that you may have missed along the way. And then also, in exciting news, Dan and I were recently guests on Hillbilly Horror Stories with Jerry and Tracy Pauly.
Yes.
Episode 422, entitled Strange But True. It came out September 22nd. Yeah. And it was such a fun interview. It was mostly us with Jerry.
Yeah, it was just with Jerry on the show, but we got to meet Tracy after the recording.
She's so cute.
Yep.
I want to hang out with her. She's adorable.
Yeah, they were great. They have a great show. Jerry's a great interviewer, just a good guy. Also does stand-up and horror, which is such a unique combination.
Yeah.
And so we had a really good chat about that.
Yeah, so if you're looking for more spoops now in the spoopiest time of the year and all year long, please be sure to go over to Hillbilly Horror Stories. Give our friends Tracy and Jerry some love.
Yeah.
Support their show if it's your thing. And yeah, and at the very least, check out our interview. It was, again, such a great time.
And they do a variety of different types of episodes, so it's not like it's just an interview-based show. So you can check out all kinds of stuff there. Some interviews, all kinds of other things.
Yes. Even our episode is like half interview, half spoopy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Dan, well, I would love to get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great. Well, I have two tales for y'all this week. My first one is a classic Hatman tale. He is back, and I'm excited to share.
Cool.
And then my second story, hold on to your britches.
Yeah?
It is the scariest seance tale I have ever read or told here on Scared to Death.
That's awesome. Yeah, you said it really got you.
Oh, man. It I was prepping it, reading it. I was like, this is good. And then I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
At certain points. And then I got to the end and I was like, you are kidding me. There's no way that happened. No, what? And then I was spooked all night. So it was a rough night of rest. And I hope that after you guys listen to this episode, you also have a hard time sleeping.
Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
I think I kind of stopped. I said that was weird. I said that's the point, and I just saw it was a weird fragmented sentence. But that's the point of what we're trying to do here.
So anyways.
I have three stories this week. The first is a well-documented haunting set in Weston-super-Mare in North Somerset, England, back in 1851, when a very creepy entity harassed at least two different families in the same house. Very well documented.
Okay.
Then we're going to travel to Belfast in Northern Ireland and explore the
Been there.
Oh yeah, very cool.
Yes. Sorry, I just had to say that. I love that.
And we'll explore the allegedly very haunted Crumlin Road Jail.
Have not been there.
Finally, we'll return to the U.S. and explore the story of a man who supposedly could never go hiking out in the woods again after encountering some strange entity on the Ouachita National Recreation Trail that runs between Oklahoma and Arkansas.
Okay.
So once you've fortified yourself with today's spoopy socks,
check these babies out. Look how cute they are. You put them together and they make a pumpkin face.
Oh, yeah, very cute.
Oh, so cute, little pumpkins.
Okay, you ready to go?
I am ready to go.
As we have seen here so many times on Scared to Death, the malevolent dead often choose to assault the living when we are at our most vulnerable, when we're asleep. That murky gray area between conscious and unconscious is where poltergeists and wraiths and paranormal entities of all kinds seem to thrive. And it appears it has been that way for a while. Today we're going to travel back in time to Victorian England, where we'll come face to face with one such entity that chose to plague the living while they slept. This entity haunted two separate families over the course of a decade and was reportedly witnessed by many. It's a little-known story with a shocking amount of documentation, and I cannot wait to share it with you now. Time now for the tale of the visitor. The year was 1851. John Clark and his family were living in the quaint seaside settlement of Weston-super-Mare in North Somerset, England. Nowadays, the Victorian village is a popular tourist destination with a local population of over 80,000 residents and a litany of museums, restaurants, music venues, and hotels scattered all across its shores. But back at the beginning of the 19th century, less than 100 people lived in Weston-super-Mare. And by the 1850s, when John Clark and his family settled there, the population had only grown to a couple thousand. John and his kin lived in a cozy seaside cottage that neighbored the local infant school, where children received their first few years of formal education. And as John himself was a gardener by trade, his comfortable home was pleasing to look at upon from the road. Vines crawled up the cottage's stone walls. Pale flowers blossomed along the winding dirt path. Foliage of all kinds grew heartily across the humble man's property. Very English. By all accounts, John Clark was a kind, generous, hard-working, and well-respected member of the small seaside community. Though he and his wife lived in an already crowded home with their multiple children, sources don't say exactly how many, they still frequently pop open their doors to friends and strangers in need of a good meal and a place to sleep. So given their reputation for hospitality, it is no surprise that on the evening of Sunday, June 8, 1851, the Clark family was hosting 2 out-of-town workmen in their home. After a hearty dinner and some jovial conversation, John and his wife and children, as well as their 2 additional lodgers, adjourned to the second floor of the cottage to sleep. But then, according to numerous publications, between the dark hours of 11 o'clock and midnight, their slumber was harshly interrupted by a cacophony of noise emanating from down below. Every member of the Clark family, as well as both lodgers, heard the mysterious groans of chairs being dragged along the wooden floor and scraping along the stone walls and tables rattling and shaking like bones. The phenomena, however, was brief. Quickly, the guttural sounds coming from the first floor subsided, and after it was determined that there were no intruders in the cottage, everyone went back to sleep, everyone except John. The mysterious disturbance had left him sufficiently rattled. An aimless fear simmered below the surface of his mind. He wasn't sure what he was afraid of, but he was afraid all the same. He laid in bed for what felt like hours, waiting for the phantom noises to return, but they never did. The longer the silence permeating the house remained unbroken, the more the muted fear John felt earlier began to fade. And the more his fears faded, the harder it was to keep his eyes open. John was feeling more and more exhausted with every sound that passed, and was just about to doze off completely when he heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, quick, urgent footsteps, ascending the staircase. John couldn't move. The door to his marital bedroom slowly creaked open now. His wife, laying next to him, stirred softly at the noise, but remained sound asleep. John now watched in stricken horror as a man entered his room and steadily made his way to the side of his bed. The figure then loomed over where John was laying on his back, staring down at him blankly. Abruptly, the nightmarish man, at least he looked like a man, reached down and placed his giant hands on either side of John's face. The tenebrous, foul, human-like entity dug its nails into the soft spot under John's jawbone and pressed its palms into his cheeks. John could feel his skin being pulled tightly down towards his ears. He wanted to scream, he wanted to fight, but all he could do was watch helplessly as the man slowly bent down so his face was mere inches away from John's. His breath was like hot steam, and his hands were the same. The man confined John in this way for what felt like an eternity, until suddenly he began to change, to mutate. In a local newspaper article published on Thursday, June 12, 1851, John described what happened next. Suddenly, the hands of the nocturnal visitor appeared to get gradually smaller, till they became as small as a young child's. His hold relaxed, and the apparition disappeared. John says the apparition appeared to be a man of about 5 feet 6 inches in height, with very black curly hair, and he was rather stout. John tried to speak and move, but had no power to do either. But immediately after his visitor left, he jumped up in bed and gave an alarm. He was terribly frightened and could not close his eyes. John never fell back asleep that night. And when morning finally came with no other choice, an exhausted and disturbed John dragged himself out of bed and attempted to go to work. But the shock of the previous night's events was too much for him, and as soon as he arrived on the job, the humble gardener became violently ill and was forced to go home. A few days later, John told his story to a fellow local named Tripp, who had lived in his cottage for 3 years before the Clark family ever moved in. To John's horror, Tripp was completely unsurprised to hear about what happened to the Clark family and the 2 lodgers, because the same thing had happened to him when he lived in that cottage. Tripp told John he was familiar with the same entity, the midnight visitor, the shadow masquerading as a man that John spoke of, because he himself had come face to face with it not once, but many times before. And just like John's wife, children, and their 2 guests corroborated a portion of his story, Tripp's own family did the same for him, according again to the newspaper. From Tripp, John received the cheering assurance that he must expect frequent visits from this unwelcome guest, as during the 3 years Tripp had lived in the house, the visitor appeared to him upwards of a dozen times, nearly in a similar way. The last time Tripp saw the visitor was at about 6 weeks before he left the house. The other person in the house could always hear the chairs and tables rattling downstairs on those occasions that the visitor arrived, but the visitor never made his appearance known to anyone but Tripp. Both Tripp and John say that after encountering the visitor in the evening, the doors and windows of the cottage were all found secure in the mornings, and the furniture in the same position as when left the previous evening. So, who was the visitor? Why did he haunt that little seaside cottage? Why did he only fully reveal himself to the patriarchs of the inhabitants and no one else? What did he want from them? Where did he come from? Why did his hand seem to shrink? And most importantly, does he still visit anyone today?
Ugh. Okay, like before he tells this story to Tripp, you can find a million ways to write it off, right?
Yeah.
Without corroboration, even though other people in the house heard the chairs and, heard sounds and were like, oh gosh, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought sleep paralysis with
Yeah.
him. Night terrors,
Yeah. Well, I didn't think that just because other people in the house heard it.
No, the man, not the noises.
Oh.
The noises, yes, heard by everybody, but then the next part, when he hears the creaking of the stairs, where the stuff that only he experienced,
Yeah.
I thought you could write off potentially as a sleep paralysis.
Definitely.
But that changes when he, like you said, when he talks to Tripp.
Yeah, once his story is corroborated, and Tripp's like, well, get ready, buddy, because there's going to be more.
Yeah.
Also, not horror related, or could be. Can you even imagine just letting 2 random strangers into your house,
the lodgers,
serving them dinner, and then inviting them to spend the night?
That was super common in the 19th century all over the Western world.
Yeah.
And maybe elsewhere as well, I'm sure in different phases, but like in the 1800s in America too. I remember reading about that in so many stories where I'm like, wait, what? And especially, and I think this would be scarier, in that time period, I mean, not with this story, but it would often happen when, people died all the time. The man of the house dies.
Yeah.
The wife doesn't get, remarried. She's a widowed now. And because of the way earning things worked, she wasn't able to get a job. And so that's how she would make enough money to cover like basically food for the kids, was to let random dudes and stuff just sleep in a bedroom of the house.
I know, it's wild.
Next to the kids.
It's wild to think about.
Sometimes in the same room as the kids.
Yeah. And it's yikes to us in 2024. I mean, not to say that there weren't bad people and that bad things didn't happen.
I think there were.
Of course there were. Where there is good, there is bad,
Sure.
always, of course. But I am going to put my faith in humanity and say more often than not, it was like, these were just dudes passing through, making a living, probably trying to, get as much as they can and then take it back to their own family. So they're probably decent.
Oh yeah, it was
people.
So different because there was no big Holiday Inn chains and Best Westerns and Super 8s and all that kind of stuff. It was, there were little inns and lodges, but they were few and far between.
Yeah, it made me think of Belle Gunnis, just how she would kill
her little scam.
Oh man,
I have a few picks.
Okay, great.
None associated with the story. It happened too long ago, but just so you can see what Western Supermare looks like here. Here's the coastline, the little town.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then here is a street in 1850 versus a street in 2017. Pretty similar, actually.
I was like, are you going to change the photo? Nope, it's the same photo. They're one on top of the other. I get it.
And they don't look that different, so I love that.
Yeah.
That's via WSM Family History Society. And then finally, this is Molly who found the story. When she was looking for photos about this, just found a picture of a random woman holding her dead baby.
Oh, that baby's dead?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, that's what it said in the photo. And
that's what it said in the photo.
And it looked like the description in the Historical Society kind of thing. But man, what a weird. Was that like a thing that happened for a while? That was a new one to me.
And also, for any listeners who are new to Scared to Death, these pictures, you can find them on our social channels, scaredtodeathpodcast.com. No, that's not right.
At Scared to Death Podcast.
That's the one.
On Instagram or Facebook.
Nailed it. Good job, Dan.
Yeah.
That photo of the woman holding the deceased baby, your question, I want to say that I have a recollection of in the Italian culture.
Maybe they did
they
that.
take pictures, even up until like recent times. I don't mean 2024, but I had a childhood best friend who was her grandparents immigrated here.
Yeah.
And I want to say I have a very distinct memory of them taking pictures of the body in the casket at the funeral.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just a cultural thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. All right, we got a lot of horror to get to. You ready for my second story?
Yeah, bruh. Let's go.
There's a decent amount of historical setup with this one before I get into the paranormal claims. The Crumlin Road Jail, located in Belfast, Northern Ireland, also known as HM Prison Belfast, was completed in 1845 and remained open for more than a century, closing in 1996. It was built as a replacement for the county jail in Carrickfergus. The first 106 inmates entered the jail in 1846. Among the inmates were political prisoners, suffragettes, and children from impoverished families. In total, there would be 25,000 inmates, roughly, who served time in the prison walls.
Wow.
Not at the same time, but overall. Yeah,
I know,
still a lot.
Whoa.
The Crumlin Road Jail was considered an advanced prison for the time, enclosed within a 5-sided wall with 4 wings up to 4 stories high and a central yard known as the Circle. The prison was built according to the separate system, which was meant to keep prisoners separate with no communication between them, to leave them alone with just their thoughts away from the other inmates. It was thought this was a good way to rehabilitate the prisoners. Now we know this was terrible, and that long stretches of isolation can lead to madness and not to rehabilitation. The Crumlin Road Jail was known as Europe's Alcatraz, and there were numerous deaths throughout the prison's history, and some of those who died were mere children. Young, impoverished, literally starving children could be incarcerated here for crimes of survival, like stealing food and clothing. In 1858, a 13-year-old boy named Patrick McGee, sentenced to 3 months, was apparently too young to endure any period of time behind bars, and tragically hanged himself in his cell during what was supposed to be a very brief incarceration. He would be far from the only prisoner to take his own life inside the facility. Many others would die through illness, murder, or execution. In total, there were 17 executions. The first inmate to be executed inside the jail was a soldier named Robert Henry O'Neill, who drew his last breath June 21st, 1854. He and 14 other inmates would be buried in unmarked graves on the property. Executions were actually open to the public to be viewed until 1901, when a private execution chamber was finally built inside the prison. The final execution occurred December 20th, 1961. Inmate Robert McClattery, executed for the crime of murder. The prison experienced more death in November of 1991, when an explosive device detonated in the dining hall and 2 prisoners were killed. And then the Crumlin Road Jail shut down March 31st, 1996. Today it remains open only as a visitor attraction and conference center full of history and the paranormal. Time now for the tale of the ghosts of Crumlin Road Jail. The Crumlin Road Jail is the only remaining Victorian-era prison in Northern Ireland. Colloquially, it's called the Crum. And many of the thousands of visitors who have walked the halls of the prison during or after its long period of use have reported paranormal experiences, such as watching doors slam by themselves or hearing both male and female voices calling out for help. A male apparition has been spotted walking down the sea wing and disappearing on numerous occasions. All kinds of supernatural activity has been reported emanating from the condemned man cell. While the cell was larger and had more comfortable accommodations, those inside knew it would be the last place they would ever call home, as their execution chamber was literally connected to it by a simple door, just a few inches away. You had a very short commute to your final destination. The atmosphere of the entire jail is now filled with sadness and grief because of the suffering of those inmates, and this sorrow is said to be felt most intensely in the condemned man's cell. Many believe that the spirits of the executed prisoners who once lived there still linger, or at least some sort of residual energy from their trauma remains. paranormal investigation took place inside the jail on Halloween night 2016, and the group of researchers claimed they saw a massive, heavy steel door close on its own and that they picked up strange noises with their digital recording equipment. In 2019, the Irish Mirror reported that a visitor captured the outline of a man in uniform, standing in the doorway of a cell in the deserted B-Wing. This aligns with reports that the spirit of a former prison warden still roams the halls long after death. Some have reported witnessing a dark entity inside this padded B-Wing cell, while others who enter this space have reported feeling uneasy or being touched, even pushed, while inside. Underneath the prison is a tunnel connecting to the old courthouse across the road, and this passage was used to transfer prisoners to and from court sessions, and there have been sightings of a gray figure in this tunnel. One former tour guide posted a brief story online about his strange encounter in the tunnel. He wrote, "It was around Halloween when this happened. We were hosting a themed paranormal event that ended after midnight. By the time all the guests had left and we'd cleaned up after them, it was almost 2 o'clock in the morning. My manager received an alert that the motion detectors at the entrance of the tunnel had just gone off, and guess who was asked to go check it out? Me. I didn't want to do it. I wasn't necessarily afraid that something bad was going to happen to me, but the dark halls of the prison would make me a bit jumpy, especially after a long night of telling ghost stories. I made my way down to the tunnel, whistling a tune to myself. The motion detectors were faulty and had gone off before, so I wasn't expecting to find anything amiss, but we had to make sure no one was going to be locked inside the prison for the night. I was starting to think that perhaps the prison really was as haunted as we told our visitors, and that was why we got a false alarm nearly every week, always at night. I opened the door and shined my phone's light down the passage. 'Hello? Anyone down there?' I called out, not expecting a response. But a second later, a shadow materialized out of nowhere, standing in the middle of the hallway, a man's silhouette outlined in the light. I was so shocked I dropped my phone, then scrambled to pick it up. When I shone my light back on it, I was surprised how long I just stood there, staring at the shadow. Even though it didn't have a face, I felt like it was looking at me. A healthy dose of fear kicked in moments later, and without saying a word, I slammed the door and locked it, and then ran back to my coworkers. I paused to catch my breath before I came around the corner. What the hell was that? I wondered to myself. I knew without a doubt it wasn't a person. My manager asked me if everything was all clear, and I said, no. We ran back to get another look, but now the shadow was gone. I never saw anything after that, and my manager never claimed to see what I saw. I only worked there another 3 or 4 months before I got a better job. I used to think before that happened that actually seeing something would have made me more excited to work as a tour guide for some haunted location. But honestly, it was a lot more fun before I truly believed. It was just a game, a bit of theater, just some cheap entertainment. But after I saw that thing, whatever it was, I was always worried every tour I'd see it again, or see something even more dreadful that I wouldn't be able to forget. Thanks to the Crumlin Road Jail, I'm most definitely a believer now, for better or for worse.
Dun, dun, dun.
We've talked about that point before, which I always think about, like, you think you might want to see something, like, oh, that'd be cool. And I can get the rationale there. Well, just the same as the rationale here working on this show, where it's like, ooh, man, it would like, seeing something really intense would just give us that much more legitimacy. You know, in my mind, I've thought that. But it's like, or it could kind of take the fun out of it. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Currently, I'm in camp. I don't want to see anything. I don't want anything to happen to me. I'll just live in the questioning.
I'm currently in the camp of I think I want to see something.
Okay.
I had that. I'm not going to bring it up again, but that tiny little experience in the Rainbow Room on the Sunset Strip in in Hollywood, and that was cool. Just to have like a tiny taste of like, how else do I explain that?
Yeah.
But and that didn't do anything to me. But having something more like really intense, like a shadowy apparition, just walk across the room.
Nope. Because
then I'm like, and I know I've said this before too. Like, I could rationalize it, like, I'm losing my mind. But I mean, I've never had hallucinations before outside of intentionally hallucinating.
You can just say psychedelics.
And so if that happened and then it just didn't happen again for a little while, I wouldn't think I'd gone crazy. I'm like, no, I saw something.
Yeah. I am currently in the no thank you.
Yeah. I think it would really rattle you because you already believe in that stuff. I mean, like I do, but you believe in a more fear-based way oftentimes where you'll get really scared of the house and really worried about something. So I think that really could mess you up.
Well, yeah, because anytime there is, it's just natural, the fear of the unknown. It's like, why are we anxious when we meet somebody that we think we might fall in love with? Or why are we anxious?
That could derail your life.
every time we get on an airplane? Why are we anxious? Like there are just
Yeah.
certain things in life that just kind of naturally makes us a little bit anxious.
Yeah.
And it's the fear of the unknown. What
Totally.
will it be like when I go to college? What will it be like when I get married? Like
Yeah.
whatever, you're, just throwing out generic things here. So fear of the unknown is already like a very natural human thing. And so yes, to then encounter something that I absolutely cannot explain that is also trying to scare me,
Yeah.
or causes a fearful reaction,
Right.
doesn't sound like a lot of fun right now.
Yeah.
But I think like 2 weeks ago, I was like, I'm ready, let's do it. So
Right,
it ebbs
right.
and flows. It ebbs and flows.
I have a few pictures.
Okay.
This first one, an aerial view of the Crumlin Road Jail. So, big jail complex.
Yeah, it's like a kind of like has like a central sort of system and then like 5 arms.
Yeah, those spokes shooting out from the middle.
That's
Absolutely.
a better choice of words. Thank you.
Yeah, I've seen other prisons designed like this. I can't remember the term they used, but when they wanted it to be prisoners to be isolated.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the Kirkbride asylums, the way that they designed them.
Yeah.
This next one, a closer pic of the exterior of the Crumlin Road Jail.
And also somebody getting married there.
This is so funny. Yeah, new bride and groom. The old haunted prison now sometimes rented out as a wedding venue.
Okay, but that could be fun.
Yeah, I guess, have a prison backdrop or something. I mean, it's different.
Well, and I don't know what it looks like inside, and I don't know if we're going to see that, but from
see
this
some.
photo, it doesn't look like a prison. It just
Yeah.
looks like an old brick building.
Totally. This next picture is that door to that execution suite. So you would be in this room, and then that black door would be shut, and the only time they would open that black door and walk you next door would be for you to die.
Not that I think that prisoners sentenced to death deserve like weeks, days, months, whatever it is, of like good rest, but you are anxious the whole time you're already anxious because you're in prison. And now on the other side of this door is your death. Death is quite literally knocking at your door. You would be, well, I don't know about you, but I would be a mess, even just sleeping in the room next to the room where I'm going to die.
Yeah. When it was your time to go, they'd put a hood over your head, your hands would be bound behind your back, that door would be opened, and you'd walk through it, and it would just be a few minutes later that you would be dropping, with the rope around your neck.
I can't stop thinking about what you're researching for Time Suck, that like terrible guy who was like,
Oh my
come
God.
on, just kill me already. Let's
Carl
go.
Panzram.
Carl Panzram.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
That'll be out about the time this episode comes out, and it is, it's crazy. It's a crazy story.
Yeah, but he was like, come on, hurry up. Let's
He was
get over it.
impatient. He almost ran. Dude truly had no fear of death. He hated all of humanity, including himself, wanted to kill basically everybody, also didn't care if he died.
Yeah, it's
Just
fascinating.
mayhem.
So he would love that room.
He'd be like, this is a great room.
Come on, this
Sleeping
is
like
awesome.
a baby.
Oh my gosh.
And then this is the other side of the room. So they have like the names displayed now with a little projector of the people who died there. But that is just this tiny room with the noose right there.
Just seeing that and knowing that that's not a recreation, or, it's not like some movie set, I just got full body chills.
And it was interesting where like then they would bury you like a lot of, prisons around the nation would, in a unmarked grave like on the prison grounds.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy that when you were on death row, you were never getting out, not even in death. Like your
I see what you
body
mean.
would remain in that space forever.
What happens now? Is your body released to your family? Do you know?
It varies from prison to prison. Oftentimes, yes, you can have your remains. Actually, I know that because on Time Sec, some especially bad people who have been executed and died in prison, they'll ask the family like, "Hey, can you come pick up so and so's remains?" And the family has every right to be like, "Nope."
Yeah.
Throw them in. One family was like, "Just flush them down the toilet."
Oh my gosh. But okay, I mean, I guess if you're a horrific piece of...
This person deserved it.
Yeah. I did make this note, like public executions, and then I thought like, yeah, we're only human, and we do... It's like when there's a car wreck on the side of the road.
Oh, totally.
The rubbernecking that goes on.
Yep.
Yeah.
People think that, society's morbid now, even for listening to podcasts like this. Like, ooh, why would you want to do this?
That's nothing.
We're much more evolved. It used to be a spectacle. Not only would like a huge crowd gather for executions, like, even just like last century, early last century, but also this is weirder to me. They would have then like, okay, that's like the Bell Gunness you brought up earlier.
Yeah.
When they found all these bodies on the property of Bell Gunness in Indiana and thought, okay, there's a serial killer, they killed her. There were people for weeks that as like a fun trip would bring the kids, they'd all get dressed up. They would they would go to the crime scene. There was not, there was no police tape. It was very open. And they would want to take souvenirs. They would there was people there taking pictures. Other times when people were like hanged in like the town square, they would like slice off little parts of their body and
Stop
people would walk away.
it.
Those were souvenirs. Take a little piece of the ear, take a little, like a toe. Not kidding.
That's disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah. So society has actually gotten more evolved.
and there's an argument that like, having public executions
a big
keeps people
deterrent.
in line.
Mhm.
I don't know what the studies are on that. I don't know if it's true. I don't have an opinion on it. I just know it's a thing people say.
I mean, I think that would affect your psychology growing up if you at the age of 9, went with mom and dad down to the town square and literally saw someone be hanged.
I mean,
That's hard for me to fathom.
yeah, because as a kid who got in trouble for shoplifting, I have to think that if I saw somebody,
That could be you, Lulu.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that actually, I was afraid of the police, but I wasn't afraid of a public execution.
That's intense.
It is quite intense.
All right, you ready for my third story?
You know what, Dan? I am. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, you bet. I think this one's my favorite from this week.
Okay.
While scrolling through a Reddit thread dedicated to creepy, unexplained stories from through hikes, one encounter claim from the Ouachita National Recreation Trail that runs between Oklahoma and Arkansas stood out as being uniquely terrifying. Through hikes are long, multi-day hikes with the intent of hiking a trail start to finish. Pretty big commitments, with the longest ones being literally thousands of miles long. The Great Trail, the so-called Great Trail that zigzags across Canada, is nearly 15,000 miles worth of trails.
Oh, do you not remember when I did that?
I forgot. The Ouachita National Recreation Trail, not nearly as long, but still 233 miles long.
Oh, no, I did that one too.
Generally takes 10 to 14 days to complete, and its lack of popularity makes it perfect for hikers seeking a more solitary experience.
That's a lot of miles in, would you say 10 to 14 days?
233 miles, yeah.
Woof.
According to the man who wrote the trail's only available guidebook, Tim Ernst, this is still the kind of trail where you can hike for days and not see another soul. The trail doesn't pass through any towns or really any populated areas at all, and it only crosses the occasional highway every few days. Trails like this are getting harder and harder to find as backpacking and through hiking becomes more popular, with the internet allowing all these new through hikers to learn about even the most remote, isolated trails. More people and infrastructure on trails does make them safer, which is a good thing, but overcrowded trails tend not to lend themselves to as many unexplained events and stories like the one I'll be sharing. Maybe the supposedly scary things reported get spooked themselves by seeing too many people. We are a pretty scary species. The story I'm about to share was posted by an anonymous woman who claims it happened to her now deceased father back when Ouachita National Recreation Trail was even less traveled than it is now. Its untouched, dense, often foggy forests even creepier than they would be if you hiked this trail today. Time now for the tale of the uninvited. Starting when I was little, my dad and I loved going backpacking together. My mom would drive us out to local trails on weekends, dropping us off in the middle of nowhere with only our packs, and picking us up a few days later tired and hungry, but with smiles on our faces. We lived in Fort Worth, and when I went to Virginia Tech for college, the distance made backpacking even more important as a part of our relationship. We started going through hiking. We'd done some sections of the Appalachian Trail, and were planning to attempt the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail, once I graduated. But in the fall of 2015, the start of my senior year, our shared love of backpacking came to a very abrupt and unexpected end. My dad had gone on a solo hike of the Ouachita National Recreation Trail on the Arkansas-Oklahoma border, and something happened on that hike that made him quit backpacking entirely. He would never tell me what went wrong, only that he, quote, finally realized how dangerous it is to sleep out unprotected in the wilderness, and he pushed me to give up overnight hikes as well. For a long time, this left me confused, and honestly pretty annoyed and angry in a lot of moments. It was my favorite thing to do with him, and we had so many future hikes planned. I stayed on the East Coast after I graduated, moved to DC, so the few times a year we saw each other never felt like the right time to really push him to tell me what happened. My dad passed away last November. He'd had some health struggles the previous few years, so it wasn't completely unexpected. And while I still miss him all the time, I've been able to move on. But he must have known that after almost a decade, I was still curious about that hike, because in one of the letters he left to me, he finally explained what happened. I've of course cut out all the personal stuff. I'd like to keep that between me and my dad. That being said, here's the reason he never felt comfortable staying out in the woods overnight again. I just got back a few days ago from the Ouachita hike I was telling you about and wanted to write down what happened while it was still fresh in my mind. I have no idea when I'll show this to you, and I wouldn't be surprised if I wait until after I've died, because I can't stand the thought of you thinking I've absolutely lost my mind. I'd like to think that by the time you read this, there will have been enough time passed after the last hike of mine that you'll be able to judge me by my overall actions, since that I was actually sane, and maybe believe me. I know how much our backpacking trips mean to you. They meant a lot to me too. I really truly wish I could have kept taking them, but being multiple days of hiking away from anything or anyone else just feels impossible for me now. I didn't make my decision to give up spending nights in the wilderness or going on long hikes far from society lightly. Here's what happened. The first 7 days and nights of the hike were completely fine. It was pretty foggy, so no big views, but doing it in the fall had been totally worth it because I didn't have to deal with that many bugs or heat. Everything I'd read about this hike had mentioned that it was pretty isolated, and it definitely was. I only saw one other through hiker and a few day hikers that first week, so most of the days I was completely and totally alone. It was the exact opposite of all of our other hikes this close to home. I didn't realize we had hikes this empty, this near us. The 8th day was no different. I didn't see anyone the entire day, and I was a 3-day hike from a major highway where I'd be getting picked up by your mom, so I didn't really expect to see anyone else for the rest of the trip. I went to sleep that night feeling great about the hike so far, and I even wrote a few notes about prepping for our PCT hike. But then everything changed. It must have been around 1 or 2 in the morning that night when I woke up to something scratching on my front tent flap. My very first thought was that it could be a bear. There were plenty of black bears in the area, but once I really woke up and paid attention, I realized it didn't sound like a bear at all. It was a light, almost delicate scratching, repeatedly going down in a straight line in the middle of the tent flap. I silently laid awake in my sleeping bag for probably 30 minutes listening to it, just hoping the sound would stop and that whatever was causing it would go away. But it didn't. Eventually, I decided I had to figure out what it was so that I could try and get some sleep. So I slowly sat up and tried to silently crawl to the front of the tent. I wasn't able to be completely silent, and I thought hearing me rustle around inside the tent might make whatever was out there react, maybe even scare it off. But the sound of the scratching didn't change. It didn't pause or become more intense. It just continued. I froze for a minute or two with my hand on the zipper before gaining enough courage to slowly unzip it. And then I saw something I still don't understand, but something I also will never forget. I can picture it as clearly in my mind now as the moment it happened. My eyes met the beady black eyes of something. Something with a long, white, human-like face and a toothy smile wider than should have been possible. It didn't have a nose. Its white face was completely smooth and blank besides its eyes and mouth. Didn't even have eyebrows. The thing was crouched down in front of my tent, and it had long, greasy black hair that covered its entire body. Its right arm was fully outstretched, reaching towards my tent. It didn't flinch when I zipped open the tent flap. Its eyes kept staring straight ahead. It was hard to tell for certain how big it was, since it was crouched down and I didn't look at it very long, but the thing appeared to be massive. I'd guess it was around 7 or 8 feet tall if it fully stood up. I only stared at it for a moment. I practically fell back into my tent, and even though I hated leaving the zipper partly open, I was too scared to get closer to that thing again. I laid awake terrified for the rest of the night, waiting for it to burst into my tent and tear me apart. Finally, the sun rose, and then I heard that thing rise up and walk off slowly into the woods. I was still too scared to take another look at it. I waited another 30 minutes after I couldn't hear it any longer before getting out of my tent. I was pretty certain it was long gone, but it was so foggy out, it could have been standing 50 feet away from me and I wouldn't have known. I packed up as fast as I could and probably spun around and quickly checked behind me about 100 times on my way to the next campsite. Thankfully, it was nowhere to be seen. By the time I made it to the next site, I'd begun to think that it might have just been some sort of really intense lucid dream or a terrible nightmare, even if my sleepless exhaustion said otherwise. Once I'd set up camp for the next night, I made myself some food and then I went to bed. Even though I didn't think the thing had followed me, even though I'd half convinced myself nothing had followed me because I truly hadn't seen anything, I still couldn't fall asleep. And then, around the same time as the night before, I heard the scratching again. It was in the exact same spot on the tent, and I'm sure it was the same creature, even though I didn't risk opening my tent again to look. Due to only sleeping 4 or 5 hours the night before, and exhaustion from all the hiking I'd done the previous week, after what must have been a few hours of silently listening, but may have been only an hour or less, I accidentally fell asleep. I woke up right as the sun started to rise. Luckily, the thing walked away again at around the same time. Unfortunately, thick fog still covered everything, and now I couldn't shake the feeling that it was near, watching me. Now I knew it was following me. I packed quickly again, constantly looking around. I only had one more night before I was safely back with civilization, but all I could think about was that feeling of being watched. I felt like a deer being stalked, every small sound making me jump. I was convinced the thing was just toying with me like a cat with a mouse, and that at any moment it would decide that it would rather eat than play and I'd be dead. I got to the last campsite and considered sitting out all night with a flashlight and the knife you gave me, but we both know I would have hurt myself long before even scratching that thing. Also, even though I'm sure that the creature could have easily ripped through my tent, I still felt slightly safer being inside it. I, of course, was praying it had stopped following me, but I wasn't surprised when I heard the scratching again. I expected it. For probably about an hour, I tried to sit through it for just one more night, but I felt like I was losing my mind, and I tried thinking of ways to sneak away. The thing hadn't reacted to me opening up my tent before, so I thought that I might be able to slip out the back of the tent, walk around it to grab my pack, and just start hiking as fast as I could towards the highway, not stopping until I was there. I opened the tent flap as quietly as I could and slowly crept out. But then, when I turned to look at the creature, I saw it looking back at me. Its smile slowly turned into a horrifying frown with its mouth gaping open, and it started to wail so loudly I had to cover my ears. It stopped scratching the tent and slowly stretched its claw-like hand out towards me like it was going to grab me. I almost started running out into the forest, but even in that panic, I realized that running into dark, thick fog in the middle of the woods, at night, no less with no gear, was a death sentence. So I went against my fight or flight impulse, and I got right back inside the tent, sat there silently, shaking, waiting for it to tear me to shreds. But then the screeching stopped. And after probably 30 seconds, that scratching resumed. That same light, almost delicate scratching, repeatedly going in a straight line in the middle of the tent flap. Burning with curiosity now as much as fear, I eventually peeked out the front flap of the tent, barely opening it, and it was back to sitting there with its eerie smile, looking straight ahead. I was in such an insane state of shock that after seeing that, all I remember doing is zipping both tent flaps back up, laying down, and eventually falling in and out of restless sleep for the remainder of the night. I was able to fall asleep, I think, partially because I knew how truly helpless I was, how I had no chance to defend myself if this thing became violent. It didn't matter if I was awake or not. My fate rested entirely on the whims of this thing, on whether or not it wanted to harm me. When it walked away again in the morning, just like it had twice before, I grabbed my water and didn't even bother packing up the rest of my gear. I half walked, half ran the rest of the hike, and with the fog in my mental state, it's a miracle I didn't get lost. I was checking behind me the whole time, and once I'd almost reached the highway, I saw it one last time, off into the woods next to the trail, probably 30 feet away from me. It was sitting on a large tree branch, crouched exactly the same as always. It was smiling, and it looked almost like it was waving goodbye to me with its long, bony arm. I walked backwards away from it, staring at it before I almost fell down after stumbling on a tree root. Then I turned and sprinted all the way to the highway, basically collapsing once I got there. Your mom was obviously very confused and concerned, and I tried to tell her some story about seeing and being chased by a bear. She didn't believe me, but she saw how scared I was and didn't push me about it, thank God. She was great about the whole thing. I felt safe being back with her. I have no idea what that thing was or why it kept following me. But what I do know is that it was very real and very large. And while it never tried to hurt me, if it had, I would have died on that hike. I hope that now you can understand that just the possibility of ever running into that thing again or something like it on another backpacking trip is enough to make me never want to get out in the wilderness like that again. That's where my dad stopped writing about the experience. I honestly wish he would have told me about what happened sooner. I'm not sure if I believe that all of that actually happened to him in the way he thought it did. But if I thought that it happened to me, I don't think I'd want to go hiking again either. I would have at least understood why he couldn't hike, and we could have found something else to replace our hiking trips with. While I stopped hiking as much when he quit, I did keep hiking occasionally, and I still do today, even after reading his letter. But I've yet to hike the Ouachita Trail, and I don't think I ever will.
Yes, seriously. I think, there's a lot of trails out there. You could just not pick that one. Mm-hmm. What do you think? What do you think it was?
I don't know. I mean, if we're going to go with like lore of existing, of creatures that many believe to exist, maybe like something in the skinwalker kind of Wendigo, Sasquatch realm, some, bipedal,
I love that word. I don't know why. Bipedal.
Like humanoid creature. Cryptid.
Yep, I wrote down skinwalker, Wendigo,
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I was definitely in that space. Also, like, I would never sleep on a camping trip, hiking trip, whatever, alone outside ever.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just like female instincts.
I know. I mean, it is different, unfortunately, because of the sexual assault stats.
Yeah.
But even like as a guy, I guess maybe when I was younger, I would have. But like, then I think at this age now, it'll look back at myself like, why? But I mean, but most people are fine. But it is just kind of weird to go out in the woods where you're away from anybody who could help you. There's hardly anybody else around. But at the same time, you're along a trail where people are going to walk by. You don't know who they are. They could be walking by at any time of night.
Yeah.
And if they come by, they're probably going to come by when nobody else is also around.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been, I mean, I have too much true crime stuff in my head now. There have been some trailside killers who have specifically targeted hikers over the years.
Sure. I mean,
for these reasons. It's easy to get away with.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess if I was going to, if there was some situation where it's like life or death and I had to do some hiking, staying by myself, I would want a very populated trail. I would want, you know Appalachian, PCT. There's these trails where you have to get a ticket or a lottery, in order to do it. A permit. That's the word I wanted. Yeah. But
and like when I went with like the kids just in that random hill up on the mountain.
Yeah.
It's like I also brought a gun. It's like for me, if I was doing that, I would definitely have a firearm.
I definitely thought that a few times where I was like, bro, where's your gun?
I'm not going to lay in a tent by myself alongside a trail with no way to defend myself.
Other than a knife.
Right.
And the way that he talks about himself, it sounds like maybe he was a little bit clumsy.
And I do think of that like slogan, like, don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
Totally.
Yeah.
I also, on this specific thing, I don't know why it creeped me out that there's only one book written about this. Like,
well, it's not a very popular trail. That's why.
It's still, I'm just like, this poor guy. I don't know him from Adam. He's probably a completely decent human.
The author?
Yeah, but I'm like, or you are setting a map because you're a killer. You're the killer.
That's
and this is the
twist,
one and only book about it. And people are like, well, it's not a very popular trail. It's not, really used that often. So it makes sense that there's only one resource for this. I'm like, that is like a giant red flag for me. Like, nope.
That'd be wild to publish a book just to set a trap to kill people.
Oh my God, it's brilliant, really.
You want to see some pics?
Yeah, sure.
So this first one is the Ouachita Trail.
Well, it is gorgeous.
Yeah, that's a gorgeous photo. It's a great photo. Whoever took this, I couldn't find out the author or what do you call it? The photo taker, the photographer. Yeah, who took it? Just gorgeous view of a huge uninhabited area. This next one, a pic of a hiker on the Ouachita Trail walking through some morning fog. It does get foggy there very often. And then this final one, this is just an AI photo somebody posted on a camping subreddit.
I'm scared.
And this is like the kind of thing you don't want to look out your tent flap and just see some entity. This is like a
no, I'm good, thanks.
Oof.
What was that show that we were watching? Yellow Jackets.
Oh, yes, I can't wait for that the new season to be out.
Oh, I kind of forgot that there would be another season.
We still need to know where they're heading. What's going on.
But it has, if anybody watched Yellow Jackets, or if you didn't, huge endorsement for it. That is a unpaid endorsement.
Yeah, while you talk, I'm going to look up the new season.
But they, there's, I don't want to give stuff away, but they, are stranded in the wilderness and things get a little dicey and they maybe don some antlers and whatnot. And just the idea of somebody like, walking through a foggy, somewhat dense forest and then you just come upon them and they have antlers and oh God, even if they were just screwing around, even if it was just a silly costume, just a shadow of that would send me over the edge. What'd you find out, Dan?
Okay. It takes too long. Okay, so the series was renewed for a second season, which premiered, March 26, 2023. And then it was renewed for a third season, but the third season is not going to come out until who knows when, 2025 currently.
Well, yeah, because we have the writer's strike
I know.
And then the SAG strike. So
God, 2 years feels like forever to wait in between series. Seasons.
Well, it is a really long time because then you kind of have to go back and do recaps and stuff. However, I do understand why it happened.
Oh, totally.
Why these strikes happened, but it is tricky. It is tricky. All right, Dan. Well, are you ready to settle in and be told some scary tales?
I am.
You are. Okay. Do you have a Layla?
I do.
Okay, a purple Layla this week?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, also, one thing I forgot to mention at the top of the show is that don't forget on Saturday, October 12th, Dan and I are going to be at Scarywood here in Idaho. So for anybody who wants to go, that information is in an episode description somewhere.
Last week's, I believe. We had a lot of stuff going on right now.
Well, it's spoopy month, so it's very exciting. And I just was like, oh, you know what? At some point here, you guys, in the coming days, I will make sure that a post goes up on Instagram socials, that just and Facebook that is like, here's this, here's that, because we realize it's a lot to track for you as well.
So if you want to go with us, follow us at Scared to Death Podcast, Instagram and Facebook.
Good call. Okay. So as I mentioned, we're going to take a little story about the Hat Man to get us going here.
Okay.
Hey, Lynze and Dan. I stumbled upon Scared to Death by pure accident after I upgraded my phone and discovered a podcast app was installed.
Funny.
I started scrolling and I happened upon Scared to Death. So here we are.
Yes.
I grew up in a very devout Christian household where anything paranormal meant that you were keeping company with demons and you were inviting them into your home via the books you read, the movies you watched, and the games you played. Any drastic changes in personality or behavior would often be attributed to demonic influence, not a mental health struggle. For the longest time, getting professional help for any mental condition was frowned upon. You were deemed spiritually weak, clearly didn't pray enough, and the devil was taking advantage of that. For years, I did not tell anyone that I saw apparitions and heard voices not of this world because of my upbringing. And like Dan, I also hated mirrors, and I didn't know why until a few years ago. But it all makes sense now. I was able to keep pretending that I saw nothing from the other side until I was 18. Then, everything changed. The veil that divides our world from others thinned for me. And that summer, my dad passed away suddenly from a massive heart attack at the age of 54. We were not close, as he was verbally abusive due to his own undiagnosed mental issues. He criticized my appearance, my weight, and he destroyed my self-esteem. The night he passed, I was in the room with him. This led to my own mental breakdown. It would not be until my 22nd birthday that I would be diagnosed with PTSD and bipolar 2, no mania. I found help behind my mother's back because of her belief that mental health doctors were quacks who used hypnosis to control you into doing their nefarious deeds. Please feel free to insert an eye roll here. I did try to confide in family and friends. However, that was met with telling me I needed to pray more and to read the Bible more. I took matters into my own hands to get the help I so desperately needed. My sleep was a major casualty in my battle. Often, I would not sleep for 2 or 3 days at a time. I was too terrified to sleep due to the whispers I heard once I turned out the lights. In the beginning, I thought nothing of it. Just figured it was a figment of my mental disorder flaring up since the doctor said that some people with bipolar do have auditory hallucinations. I couldn't often ignore what was being said by the voices in my head, so I resorted to sleeping with my headphones on, music playing from my Discman to drown out those annoying chatters. This worked until the first time I saw him, the dark man who would emerge from my closet to torment me in both my sleep and my waking hours. Since I was little, I never slept with the closet door open and was absolutely OCD about making sure the door was closed when I went to bed at night. I always believed that closets were portals and that by keeping the door closed at night, it would contain whatever tried to come through until the morning. This particular night, in my exhaustion from lack of sleep, I left the closet door ever so slightly ajar, and that's when he made his move. I was in and out of sleep that night, waking up every 30 minutes or so. As I attempted to rest, I heard the sound of my closet door sliding open. The darkest shadow of a man stepped out. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. I rubbed my eyes, looked again, hoping he'd be gone. Boy, was I wrong. So wrong. He stood just outside the closet staring at me, his hat brim pulled low over his eyes. I blinked several times, thinking of how my mind was being ultra messed up, manifesting this entity to scare me. I lied still, hoping that he would grow bored and leave so that I could get some rest, but he did not. Soon the man was standing at the side of my bed, looking down at me, sizing me up. He was dressed in all black. The wide brim of his hat and the upturned collar of his coat hid most of his face. However, the parts of his face I could see were white, and his eyes were dark, empty pits. I squeezed my eyes shut and began to pray. The air felt heavier the longer I prayed, but eventually he did leave. When I woke the next morning, the closet door was wide open. Not slightly ajar, as I had left it, but wide open, as if he were saying to me, I saw you, and you saw me, and I want you to know I was here. After that initial encounter, I did not see him again for a while, but he did come back. I had fallen into a deep sleep thanks to the medication I was taking. In my dreams, I was sitting fully clothed in a clawfoot tub filled with ice-cold water that rose to my neck. The room was dark, and I was alone. The heavy footsteps of a man began to fill the silence. As he emerged from the shadows, he pulled gloves down over his pale hands, but was no longer wearing his hat. The dark man had thick, long, wavy hair that hid his pale face from view. I could make out a creepy smile on his face as he came upon me. I tried to get out of the bathtub, but before I could make the move, he was upon me, hands around my neck, pushing me under the cold water. I grabbed at his wrists, clawing and scratching, but he was so strong. He let me up for just a split second before pushing me back under. I heard his voice in my head. You wanted this, and I'm giving it to you. Be a good girl now and die. My vision began to go dark, and then I shot upright in my bed, fumbling to turn on my bedside light. It had all been a dream. Except the closet door was once again wide open. I was scared, but also angry. That bastard had tried to kill me in my dreams. A few weeks passed with no visits from the murderous asshole. I was relieved, and actually I began to get some decent sleep. But just when I thought it was okay, he popped his ugly head up again. Only this time, I was wide awake. I had been hearing whispers for most of the day, but managed to ignore them until bedtime. I popped a CD into my Discman, put on my headphones, and fell asleep. During the night, I awoke to the sound of the closet door sliding open. I had one eye on him as he once again made his way to my side of the bed. Before I could tell him to F off, my face was shoved down into my pillow. I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't move. He somehow rendered me helpless. All I could hear were whispers telling me I wanted to die and he was going to grant my wish. I don't know how long I was face down in my pillow when the pressure suddenly lifted. My mom was standing in my doorway with the hall light on, screaming at me to wake up. She asked me what was wrong. Why was I making such noise? I didn't dare tell her what had happened since she was quite judgmental about my mental health. She said she had heard a loud thud and thought I had fallen off my bed. I told her I was fine, apologized, and once she was certain I was okay, she went back to her side of the house, and I broke down. I have kept this story to myself except for a couple of therapists and one very close friend. I still see apparitions and hear disembodied voices, but I choose not to engage. I have enough going on in my life, and I don't need the extra trouble. Besides, my closet is overstuffed with clothes and accessories and whatnot. There's not enough room for anything to be coming through unless they want to get tangled up in my wig collection. Keep up the good work and keep the scares coming. Forever a peeper, Marta.
Oh, that's great, Marta. I like the ending a lot. I didn't think about that where, like if you're afraid of something coming out of your closet.
Just stuff your closet?
Just have your closet so full that there's no room for anything to be hiding in there.
I felt like this was an invitation for me to go shopping.
Oh.
That's what I heard. To really smash the closets full. Like every closet in the house just needs to be jam-packed full of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Okay.
that seems very logical to me.
And I'm sorry that you had that situation with your dad. That is frustrating. To have it not be resolved and to have, all the conflicting emotions and somebody who kind of like made you feel bad about yourself. And I am sure that you're great.
I think you're fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what a tricky situation. Like, Marta is an adult. She shared some additional information not shared here. She's in her 50s now. And, but what a tricky thing for your faith to get in the way of you getting the help that you definitely need.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I've seen that. I don't know why time suck keeps coming up just naturally in this particular episode.
Yeah.
But, doing episodes about like there's this one guy, I believe his name was Edward Gingrich. Like it's like Gingrich, but I think it's Gingrich.
Okay.
And he was an Amish man and severe mental health struggles.
Oh.
And there was like beyond red flags that like he needs serious help. I'm talking hardcore paranoid schizophrenia.
Oh gosh.
Powerful
you can't pray
delusions.
that away.
No, powerful, but they tried. Powerful
Yeah.
delusions, violent tendencies as delusions got deeper. I'm not even going to say on this show what happened because it was extremely graphic, but he murdered someone in a very, very, very graphic way in the midst of a hallucination. And for years leading towards that, he could have been helped, but instead of taking him to a psychologist, they would do stuff like literally take him to a chiropractor who would prescribe drinking black molasses.
Oh, sure.
Or molasses and some kind of, I think it's like black strap molasses, and basically having like chiropractic feet adjustments because that was part of this particular like group's faith.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we have all this science that, people have worked really hard to develop to help people in these situations. So sad.
So sad. But we're glad that you have the help now that you need, Marta. And yeah, also, Hat Man.
And
I've
Hat Man
never
with
seen the Hat Man take his hat off. So maybe not.
Who knows? Who knows what the Hat Man is?
He is one of the worst ones.
I've never heard that detail either about like the pale face.
I know,
or like sunken in pits for eyes, but like actually seeing the skin or whatever of the face, having it be like light colored.
When you were telling, I think it was your first story and then your third story, I was like, these descriptors are all kind of coming together in a weird way.
Oh my God, I just thought of Long Legs, not Daddy Long Legs, but Long Legs, that horror movie.
Yeah.
How he looked with the white makeup on his face and the long stringy hair.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, then I was thinking about the the trail.
Oh yeah, Washita Trail.
And the dad said that, it had a white face, but just eyes and a smile.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's weird. And then I think it was in your first story that I was like, oh my gosh, this thing with like long curly hair. And I was like,
yeah, the dark long curly hair.
They're all meshing together. They're going to become one giant, super creepy thing.
I know my mind goes two places when there's all these similarities over especially many, many years and across cultures.
Yeah.
Like you go into a lot of like Asian horror lore and supposed sightings, and very, very common. Pale skinned woman, dark hair, long dark hair covering the face. And there's the argument that like, okay, maybe that's just a naturally kind of creepy thing where we read each other's faces to tell if someone is friend or foe, to read their tone, or like are they angry? Are they kind? All that stuff. Not being able to see that is just naturally anxiety producing because you don't know where you stand with them.
Yeah.
So maybe it could be like that is why people manifest these, kind of visions. Or maybe like when the first people started saying they thought they saw long black hair and all this, and then these like witch archetypes are kind of formed, and then we're all just kind of copying since then. Or most terrifying possibility by far, that's just how these fucking things look. And they're real and they're monsters and they just keep showing up.
And people just keep seeing it. And the reason we keep hearing the same thing over and over.
Because that's how they look. They're an actual type of entity that is out there and are terrifying.
That's what scares me the most, is just the idea that all over the world, through all cultures, creeds, like every variation of humanity, that we all see the same scary thing.
Yeah,
it's a weird,
it is weird.
Through line.
There's like the horror, like I guess you call them like horror archetypes almost from these different cultures. And like one is like a werewolf type entity, Sasquatch, werewolf, skinwalker, but just a man-ish beast.
Yeah.
That it walks on two legs and all that. And it is crazy how that has just always been around. Like people going back to like the ancient Greeks and everything have just always thought they've seen this type of thing, this wild man kind of entity.
Blah.
Yeah. Blah.
Does he look a little bit like you?
If I had long hair, yeah, probably. Hairy. A little crazy looking.
That's what I was thinking. Okay. Now I want you guys to settle in and get real good and cozy, because this is a really long story.
Yeah.
It is so well written. The way that this story is told so well takes me back to the episode She Likes You with a fan favorite story coming in about that I don't want to give anything away about that episode. If you've never listened to it, go back to it. It's one of the best fan stories in that. To this day, it still bothers me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was from year 1.
Crazy. So
5 years in, I'm like, that one still gets me. Hey, Dan and Lynze. I'm a huge fan of the show and a crossover creep from Time Suck.
Yes.
Hail Nimrod.
Hail Nimrod.
I should preface the story by stating I've always been a critic of paranormal encounters. I'm a scientist, and I never have put much stock in things I can't prove or disprove with hard evidence. However, sometimes even if the mind knows there's nothing to be afraid of, one still can't help but feel a little leery of that slightly ajar closet door in a dark room. There's nothing in there besides clothes. We know that. And yet, we still feel a creeping sense that someone or something is watching. At night, when I go to bed, I still am at pains to be sure that my legs are under the blankets after the lights go out. I'm not a child anymore, but I don't like to sleep with one leg sticking out. Because if a cool hand ever reached out from under the bed and grasped my ankle, I might scream to wake the dead. That sort of thing doesn't happen, of course, and we all know that. The thing under my bed waiting to grab my ankle, it's not real. I know that. And I also know that if I'm careful to keep my foot under the covers, it will never be able to grab my ankle. Time now for the tale of the seance.
Mm-hmm.
My friends and I have always been huge fans of horror. In high school, we used to meet up on a weekly basis to watch the latest horror flick, tell spooky stories, or play pranks to scare the shit out of each other. We were masters of pranks. Our senior year, we greased up 2 pigs and numbered them 1 and 3 and then let them loose at the school. It was so much fun watching them cause havoc, but what was even more fun was watching the staff spend hours hunting the school grounds trying to find the non-existent pig number 2. Okay, side note, this is like our daughter Monroe. This is her plan for her senior prank.
I love it.
I love it. Anyways, after high school, we unfortunately began to drift apart. I suppose it's only natural, especially if members of the friend circle go to opposite ends of the country for college. We would try to get together around holiday breaks or the summer, but it was never quite the same. Usually the whole time we were reunited, we would spend time catching up on life events. Samantha, we called her Sam, and I were the only ones who stayed in town. We had a sort of off again, on again, dated since we were freshmen kind of thing, and we both went to the same university. But Tim and Logan had both left town for New York and California respectively, but would typically be back in town to visit family for the holidays. The summer before our final years of college was our last group reunion. The previous 2 times, Logan had bailed on us because he had a new girlfriend and had decided to stay in California with her for the holidays. I think we could all feel the group had run its course, but in a last-ditch effort, Sam called us up for the, quote, scariest fucking night of our lives. She was excited about this plan, and she even managed to convince Logan to come and bring his girlfriend. On the outskirts of our town, there's an old, abandoned hospital, which has been acquired by the Historical Society. It was a former TB hospital, and according to local legend, is haunted by the spirits of those who died there. During Halloween, it becomes a hotbed for thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts looking to make contact with the dead, and for a fee, you can rent the place and spend the night. We'd already done this several times in high school to no paranormal avail, and so when I heard this was Sam's big surprise, I was a bit disappointed. However, she persisted and said that this time was going to be different. I reluctantly agreed. After all, it was the off-season, so the cost of renting the place for a night was dirt cheap, and I honestly had really missed seeing everyone. We arrived at about 9 p.m. I remember pulling up to the old derelict thinking I should be more worried about rats and tetanus than malevolent spirits. But here we are, no backing out now. As I entered the building, I was greeted with a sack tap from around the door. "Long time no see, motherfucker! How are you?" Tim's customary greeting. Despite 3 years of, quote, higher education in pre-law, he's still the same kid I went to high school with. I firmly believe that deep down in every man is the same goofy dickhead from high school. We just get better at reining him in until moments like this when you can finally let your guard down. "Great, man," I said, coughing a bit as I recovered. "Didn't you hear the news?" "No, what?" "Oh, she didn't tell you?" "Who? Tell me what?" "Your mom, we're getting married next week." "Dude, fuck you," he said and laughed. The inside of the hospital isn't any better than the outside. It looks like any other run-down piece of shit. However, unlike most pieces of shit, this one has a morgue, and of course, that's where we were meeting. Obviously, this has been the room where all paranormal investigators and occult enthusiasts get huge paranormal boners as they wander around waving their EMF finders and other gadgets trying to pick up signs of ghosts. Some of them have claimed to hear voices and scratching. I'm more inclined to believe that they just heard rats. But hey, just because I hadn't encountered anything doesn't mean they didn't, I suppose. As a physics major, I had become the more doubting Thomas, choosing instead to believe in more rational things I could prove with hard evidence. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate a good scare, though. I love horror movies, even if I know they're all BS. We descended the stairwell into the basement morgue area. Ironically, this is actually one of the cleaner areas of the hospital. There were way less rat droppings, and only 50% of the ceiling was covered in black mold. There are, of course, no bodies in any of the drawers, and most of the medical equipment has been removed. There are a couple of metal gurneys along the wall, the steel examination table in the middle, and some random non-functioning surgical lamps. Overall, a very spooky scene cut straight from a James Wan film. Mm-hmm. In the middle of the room, I see the rest of the crew assembled. Logan with his girlfriend Mallory and Sam. They're standing around the steel examination table where I see a large candle and a Ouija board. The rest of the room is illuminated by the glow of several candles set up along the periphery, giving the whole scene an eerie overtone. On the floor by the table, I see Sam has brought a bag of tools with her. I see a box of salt, chalk, a weird hat like what the old Victorian era psychics would wear, and a mason jar of dark liquid. Wow, going all out this time, I see, Tim said. Hell yeah, we're going to get it right this time and talk to some real spirits. Help me finish setting up. Grab the chalk and draw a big pentagram with our table in the middle. I don't like this. We shouldn't be messing around with this shit, Mallory said, clearly uncomfortable. Relax, Logan said. We've been coming here for years and nothing's ever happened. Yeah, but we've never tried this, Sam said as she gestured to the Ouija board. I don't like it. Okay, sweetie, I'll tell you what. If shit starts to get crazy, we can be the first ones to bolt out of here. Sam then takes the box of salt and makes a big circle around us. It's for our protection, she says, against evil spirits. I scoff under my breath. I've honestly never been much of a believer in the paranormal stuff, but I must admit, even if I felt a bit uncomfortable, I went to Catholic school my whole life, and part of me wants to believe so badly just to know there's something after this life besides an empty void of nothingness. I had never used a Ouija board before, and I vaguely knew what they looked like and how to use them thanks to all the horror movies we'd watched in the past, but I never felt inclined to use one. Not because I was afraid of reaching out and accidentally encountering a demon, which is what the church in every scary movie happens to tell you will happen, but more so, I was afraid of reaching out, like really reaching out and getting nothing. I was afraid of conducting the experiment to confirm my own hypothesis. Once you die, you're gone, and there's nothing. Sam unscrews the lid of the mason jar, dips her fingers in, and starts flicking liquid all over the board. I see little droplets more clearly now as the candlelight reflects their deep red coloration. What's that? I asked, but already sensing the answer. Blood. Who'd you kill to get that? Tim asked jokingly. I didn't kill anyone, you dumbass. I bought a bunch of packs of ground beef and drained the blood into a jar. Ooh, so creepy. We've got ourselves a real voodoo witch. If you guys are done dicking around, shall we start? Tim grabbed the hat from her bag and put it on. Okay, I'm ready. How do I look? He actually looked kind of cool in it in a weird, old-timey psychic kind of way. Like an idiot, I said. Hey, give that back, said Sam. Why? You aren't the one leading the session. Plus, I'm the one that bought the hat. Yeah, but it looks so much better on me. Ugh, fine, fuck it. Okay, so how does this work? Logan asked. We should open with a prayer for protection, Sam said. Everyone hold hands. We did, and then we recited the Lord's Prayer, followed by the prayer of St. Michael. When we finished, we all placed our hands on the planchette. At first, nothing happens, besides Tim moving it around to spell penis or some other crude things. We were getting close to giving up when the planchette moved to hello. We were, at first, a little taken aback by the sudden change in the conversation, and I initially thought it was Tim fucking around. Nice try, man. Next, are you going to say you're the ghost of my grandma? No, man, that wasn't me. I swear, I was going to spell out queef when it moved to hello. Stop being a dick. I know it was you. Fuck you. It wasn't me. Logan? Nope. Sam's eyes lit up. Holy shit, you guys. You swear it's none of you? Swear on your lives. Yes, it's not me, we each said. Mallory made a little whimpering sound. Oh, please tell me this isn't real, she said. The planchette moved. I-M-R-E-A-L. Fuck. She exhales like a deflating balloon. Okay, I have a question, oh spirit envoy from the other side, Tim says. Where in the world are you? Logan's balls? I think he lost them around 2 years ago, wouldn't you agree? Yeah, right around 2 years ago, somewhere in LA, I think. Dude, you're such a fucking dick. No answers from the board. Sam says, guys, we might have finally reached out and got something. Can you please try to be serious for like 5 fucking minutes? Okay. I was just trying to lighten the mood. Then he clears his voice, and in his best Jigsaw impersonation, Do you want to play a game? I know the question was directed to us, but at the moment, the planchette moved to yes. Were you a patient here? Sam asked. No. How long have you been here? L-O-N-G. What brings you to us now? F-U-N. At that moment, the whole atmosphere of the room changed. What started out as a sort of fun game had suddenly become cold and dark. I could see the expressions on everyone's faces change. I think they felt it too, like all the good feelings were gone and replaced with an ice pick through the heart. I felt afraid, genuinely afraid in a way I had never felt before. The planchette began to move along the board in a figure 8, not stopping on any letter, just perpetually moving. Who are you? Sam managed to stutter. Z-O-Z-O. What do you want? Once the question was asked, all the candles surrounding us began to dim, and the already cold basement grew frigid. All the candles spontaneously went out except the one in the middle, and that's when I saw an outline of a face in the flame. It was a black face with deep red eyes and was smiling back at me with rows of gleaming sharp teeth. Then, seeming to emanate from all around us, a deep, raspy voice exclaimed, "You!" And the candle erupted a huge flame for a split second before extinguishing itself. Holy shit. Fuck! Screaming voices surrounded us. Someone get a flashlight! After what seemed like an eternity, Sam found the flashlight and turned it on, and the screaming stopped, and Mallory was sobbing. Let's get the fuck out of here. And no one argued. We got back in our cars and were visibly shaken from the terror. Please, let's go home, Mallory pleaded to Logan. Please. Oh yeah, I think this party's over. Be careful, guys, I said, and I meant every word. The drive home for me was uneventful. I live alone. Well, sort of. I have a cat, so basically I live alone. I was not looking forward to trying to sleep alone in my dark apartment. When I got home, I immediately went around all 3 rooms of my big 800 square foot place and turned on all the lights. I sat in my kitchen/living room at the table and started drinking. I had a half bottle of Jack on the counter, and I grabbed it and started taking swigs while staring out the window at the lights of the cityscape. Eventually, I became liquored up enough to finally try to go to sleep. I had gained some whiskey confidence and told myself this was all some elaborate hoax, like holy shit, Sam got us so good. I'd have to call her in the morning and ask her just how much those special effects set her back. I mean, it was impressive. I turned out the lights and I went to bed. My cat sat on the corner of the bed and just stared at me. I closed my eyes and I fell asleep quickly. When I opened my eyes, I was in Tim's parents' house. I remember they were away camping in Appalachia for the weekend, and he had the place to himself. I'm in the living room, and it's dark. And then I start to hear the tinkling of the piano. I look over and I see it. The face I saw in the flame. Only now this face is attached to a monstrous body sitting at the piano. Its skin is black from head to toe. Where there should be feet are black hooves, and where there should be hands are huge claws like razors. It looks up at me with that hideous grin as if it just recognized a friend at a party, and then it moved its claw to its mouth in a shushing sort of gesture. I was frozen in fear. I don't think I could have made a noise even if I wanted to. Then I hear a voice from another part of the house. Hello? Is someone there? I have a gun and I know how to use it. It's Tim. I have to warn him. Oh my God. I try to yell, but no sound comes out. I look back over to where it was. It's standing now and plucked a piano string from the instrument. Tim, no, run! I want to say, but I can't. I look back over, but it's gone. The house is silent except for my frantic breathing and the sound of footsteps nearing the room. The door to the living room opens and I see Tim walking in, only he doesn't seem to see me. He's looking right at me, but he doesn't see me. He scans the room for intruders and slowly moves towards the piano. Then I see it. It was hiding in the shadow behind the door, and it silently creeps up behind Tim. Oh my God, no, Tim, no. I want to scream, but I can't. I want to run over to him, but I can't move. I'm frozen in place like a fly on the wall, there to observe, not to engage. It comes up behind him, pulls the piano wire around his neck, and lifts him up with such brute force it pulls him off the ground. I hear Tim choking and grasping as the wire gets tighter and tighter. Stop, goddammit! I yell in my mind. I feel tears running down my face as drops of blood erupt around the wire. Then it looks right at me and starts pulling the wire in a sawing motion, blood spurting everywhere, and I hear the gurgling screams as Tim breathes his last utterly horrified breaths. The whole time it's smiling and staring at me. It drops Tim's lifeless body nearly decapitated to the ground. His final visage of horror looking up at me. I'm sobbing now but still frozen. I feel a warm spot in my crotch forming. It dips its fingers in the blood and walks over to the wall and writes one word. You. I can't bear to look any longer. I squeeze my eyes shut, and when I open them, I'm in my bedroom. I can feel tears still wet on my face, and I have definitely pissed myself. The cat is still sitting on the corner of my bed staring at me. I get up and I go to the bathroom and I immediately start vomiting. I can't think about it. Tim's face, all the blood, it's not real, I think to myself. It's just a stupid dream. You drank way too much and you got in your own head after Sam's stupid creep show. Fuck, I say to myself. I look in the mirror and I feel like I've aged a lifetime. I feel like absolute shit. I clean myself up and I change my shorts and I think I'd feel better if I checked on Tim. I'm about to call him when I realize it's 1 a.m. I feel fucking stupid for wanting to call someone after a bad dream. I mean, after all, that's all it was. Just a bad dream. I opt not to call him but send a text, hey man, give a call when you see this, it's urgent. That way, I wouldn't call and wake him up for nothing, and as soon as he sees the text, he'll call me. Hell, maybe he's still up and he'll call tonight. I see the message is delivered, but not read. I wait up for about half an hour before I convince myself this is all bullshit and I should just get some sleep. I know there's a 0% chance of getting sleep on my own, so I head to the bathroom and grab a couple Ambien that I had stashed from a travel trip overseas. I pop them and I chase them down with another shot of whiskey and I lie down. My cat is still on the bed staring at me. What the fuck are you looking at? I think, but my head starts to swim and I quickly find myself in a drug-induced sleep. I open my eyes and find myself in a bedroom. Again, I'm affixed to the wall, unable to move or scream. In the bed are Logan and Mallory, sleeping. No, I think to myself. I scan the room looking for it, but I don't see anything out of the ordinary. And then I hear a slight tap, tap, tap coming from above. Terrified, I look up. It has latched to the ceiling, staring down at me and smiling that toothy, impossible large smile while tapping at the light bulb. I see Mallory begin to stir. Oh my God! She screams. Logan sits bolt right. What? But it's too late. It pounces on Logan, reaches one monstrous hand in front of the other behind his head and snaps it in a full 180. The room echoes with a loud crunch as every cervical vertebra breaks simultaneously, and he's dead. Mallory screams as it straddles her and begins to pummel her repeatedly. Stop! Jesus Christ, make it stop! I scream in my head, but it doesn't, and it looks right at me and it smiles. There's very little remaining of Mallory's face to be recognizable as a face at all. It's beaten her to a pulpy mess of blood, brains, and skull fragments. It dips a claw in the carnage and writes above the bed, you. I squeeze my eyes shut. This isn't real. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. I'm surrounded by silence. I dare not open my eyes again for fear that seeing that grinning thing and my murdered friends. I keep my eyes squeezed shut, seemingly for hours, listening to the silence, listening for any indication that I'm not alone. When I do open my eyes again, I'm no longer in that room. My heart quickly sinks to the pit of my stomach. I'm not in my room either. I'm in a room I'm all too familiar with. Sam's bedroom. You son of a bitch. No! I scream in my head, but nothing comes from my lips. I thrust and strain with all my might to move, but again, I'm frozen. Wake up, Sam, wake up! I scream in my head. I see it. It strolls casually up to her sleeping body. It gets on top of her, and I see her startled, scared expression. I hear her begin to scream, but it's cut short as he grabs her around the neck and begins to choke the life out of her. Her arms and legs flail. She tries hitting, but no avail. Her flailing becomes weaker as the light in her eyes begins to fade. God, no. God, no. I whimper and begin to cry. I close my eyes. I can't bear to watch. I love you, Sam. I love you. I open my eyes. My hands are around Sam's throat. I see the last flicker of light leave her eyes. What the fuck is happening? I leap off the bed and try to shake her. Wake up, Sam, please wake up. I feel for a pulse, but I know it's in vain. She's gone. And then I hear a childlike giggle come from behind me. There's a dresser with a large mirror attached. I walk over to it, but instead of my own reflection, I see it looking back at me, smiling that toothy grin, its red eyes beaming back at me. Hi, Johnny. Did you have fun? I sure did. Well, I really should get going now. I think our time is up. There are so many more toys out there, and I'm ready for more fun. Then one red eye goes dark for a second as if it was fucking winking at me. See you in hell, Johnny. It exclaims jovially, and in an instant, I'm facing my own reflection again. Several hours later, I call the police. I lied. I told them Sam and I had a morning study session, but when I knocked, no one answered. I let myself in because we have spare keys to each other's places, and that's when I found her body. I was obviously the prime suspect for her murder and was immediately taken into custody. I looked particularly guilty when they eventually also discovered the bodies of Tim, Logan, and Mallory. I was swabbed, fingerprinted, and thoroughly examined, but none of the evidence matched me. Interestingly, even the impressions of hands' fingers from Sam's neck did not match my profile in the slightest. There was no trace evidence of a perpetrator at any of the scenes. The only blood and DNA left at the scenes were that of the victims. Another perplexing feature was no evidence of forced entry at any of the crime scenes. During my interrogation, I did tell them about the seance, which of course they chalked up as bullshit. I mean, I guess I would too if I was in their shoes. I didn't mention my, so to speak, dreams. I knew they wouldn't believe me anyways. Due to the total lack of evidence linking me to any of the crimes, I was released and told to be, quote, careful. For a while, a cop sat outside my apartment, and I like to think it was for my protection, but I know they were really just waiting to see if they could catch me doing anything suspicious. Almost a decade has gone by now with no signs of it. I've never touched a Ouija board ever again, nor have I made any other sort of attempts at reaching out to the spirit realm. I like to think my friends are in a better place. That terrible night confirmed for me the presence of great evil. However, where there is great evil, there must equally be great good to balance. As I write this, a monarch butterfly, Sam's favorite creature, sits by my window, slowly opening and closing its wings. I think it's a good sign.
Yeah, that was a ride.
That was a ride.
I felt like a nightmare fuel.
I know. I know. I was so... Oh, don't say it.
I know.
Well, if you know, then why the fuck would you say it?
Yeah, because it was...
Because
it came up in the story. Yeah, I forgot about it.
Don't say it.
Like
I know.
Beetlejuice.
What?
It's like Beetlejuice.
Well, Beetlejuice you can say 3 times. You can say it 100 times if you want. I was so upset by the story.
Mm-hmm.
So upset. That ending, I'm like, what the fuck? How are you fucking okay, John? Like, your friends all died after a seance and you were accused of murder.
That's crazy. The figure 8 thing. Do you happen to remember what that means? Because there's something there. I'm going to look it up if you don't, but that is something that is, I forgot about it. Figure 8 planchette.
I don't.
That's real bad, I think.
I don't know.
I think that's the thing. If that starts happening when you're playing with the Ouija board,
you're supposed
stop
to
immediately. Like shut it down.
Yeah, I am not up to date on my Ouija board technique because I have no desire to ever play with Ouija board again. a few times in my youth was more than enough.
Yeah, I'll have to look later, but there's the do's and don'ts. Never play alone. Never let the spirits count down to the numbers or go through the alphabet.
Which we just learned about the countdown. We didn't know about that until a recent episode. Man, it was just in the last couple of weeks with that guy. Okay, what'd you find?
If the plan, I mean, this is just, if the planchette repeatedly makes a figure 8, it means that an evil spirit is now in control of the board.
Ugh. Okay. God, I'm telling you, I was like full body chilling. When it spelled out that particular demon's name, I was like, oh, shit. And I just, listen, I would never encourage anybody to play with a Ouija board. Like, I have no desire. I don't want you to do it. And this is exactly why.
Ugh.
Because you have no control over what is happening. Yikes. Now that I think about it, I would have to go back and like really examine the story again, but I don't think they ever closed the session. That is a huge part of the problem. Is that like they got scared and they took their hands off the planchette and they didn't say goodbye.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. That is probably how it got out. Okay.
Ooh, yeah, there's so many like don'ts here.
Yeah.
But interesting. Never leave the planchette on the board when you're not using it. Don't just leave it sitting there.
That makes sense because think about it. If the planchette becomes powered by a spirit, there's nothing to say that it can't start working on its own. See, Ouija boards are bad, you guys. Bad.
They do freak me out. And I'm like, I consider myself most of the time, even though we're doing the show, like a very skeptical, logical person. And I'm not religious. I mean, I was raised, in and out of Christianity. But I didn't have anybody like really, bombarding me with like, don't play Ouija boards, they're scary. My dad for a while was like, he got mad at me for bringing a Dungeons and Dragons book home.
That's pretty funny.
Because he was raised to think that was satanic.
Yeah.
But they do scare me. Like Ouija board, I've literally never played one. And the longer I go, the older I get, I don't get like more receptive to it. I get more scared of it.
Correct. Sorry, my mouth just made a weird sound. Also, like being raised Catholic by my mom, I now am reflecting. I'm like, I don't actually remember my mom ever telling me not to play with the Ouija board. She did tell me I was not allowed to watch Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
What'd you find?
There's so many, but it does say, I mean, again, this is just some random person, but I have seen these in other websites.
Yeah.
The board must be closed properly or evil spirits will remain behind to haunt the operator.
Yeah. So that makes so much sense. Like this terrible thing, this seance that they just thought they were going to screw around and have a good time. Nobody closed the board. Of course it got to John.
Johnny, you got me.
Ugh.
You scared me.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I had a lot of crazy chills out of that story.
Yeah, I'm going to need to watch like an episode of something very funny before I go to bed. Woof. And it's just like really unfortunate that his name is Johnny because it's like, here's
I know, I thought of
Johnny.
That too from The Shining.
I know.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Okay.
Well, do you have it in you to do some spoopy shout outs?
Yeah, let's cleanse
Or
it with some
Annabelle
Annabelles.
shout-outs?
I'll start with the Annabelles.
Oh, my brain hurts.
We would like to thank the following Annabelles for supporting being terrified, supporting us scaring you. Andy is rad, Kirill Fedorov, Morgan Bush, Brett Hyde, Sarah, Sam Pulley, Megan Robinson, Robbie, Becky Herrera, and Tammy. Sorry, Tammy, if this is your real last name, but I'm a junior high boy. Tammy Furbush.
Furbish.
But it's like, it's
I
the
know
word
how it's
fur
spelled.
and bush. I'm just letting but not everyone can see what you've seen. I'm letting like everybody know fur and bush, those two words combined. And yeah, I went full junior high there.
Yeah, well, I guess what John said is that you guys are just high school boys stuck in man bodies. I'd like to thank the following Annabelles for also continuing to support everything we do here. Maddie Gerard, Tyler McFarlane, Thea, Gwen Carlson, David Ramey, Jessica Paul, Brandy Mulder, Faith Burgess, Bree, and Abigail Roop, or Roopy. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
And then I have a handful of spoopy shout-outs.
Yay.
To Daniel from Madison, thank you for the best year of my life. I never knew real love existed until I met you. I glub you.
Oh, thanks, Madison.
That's so cute.
Oh, probably, different Daniel.
Oh, so awkward. To Josh from Katie, happy anniversary to the person who knew me before I knew myself. I love you more than infinity, and I hope you realize it. Here's to many more wonderful years of us. To Kendall from your mom, Samantha, happy 10th birthday. I'm so insanely proud of you and all the hard work you've put in to become the best reader in your class. I love you, Boogie Monster.
Aw.
To Kristen from Megan, happy birthday, sissy. I'm glad we get to share the same love for the same podcast. And to Amy from Cassie, happy birthday to my camp bestie. I am forever grateful that we met and became best friends. We're going to kill it at Camp Mixology next year. Yes, you will. I trust that you both will. And we'll be talking more about our summer camp after we get through the spoopy season. But I do love this shout out because Cassie needed a ride and she just like randomly messaged the summer camp Facebook group, and then Amy replied, was like, I'll take you. It's like these two random strangers. The only thing that they know at this moment that they have in common is that they both listen to the shows and they're both going to the same place. And so much trust and faith in one another, and then ended up becoming the absolute best of friends.
That's awesome.
And I love that about our community.
Me too. Okay, I'll take us out. Before I do, I just have to get this in my system. Prepare yourself for an eye roll.
Okay.
I've been thinking about people that Tammy Furbush could be getting married to.
Okay.
Or just with.
Yeah.
And the main one I have is Johnny Waxwood.
Great.
Okay. Now I just hit thank you. Thanks for continuing to send your personal tales of
Such
terror
an idiot.
to mystory@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. You can email us for everything else at info@scaredtodeathpodcast.com.
Wait, sorry. Does she work at the law firm of Acox and...
Acox and Butts. I forgot about that. Thanks to Logan Keats for scoring today's show. Thanks to Heather Rylander for organizing the My Story emails. Thanks to book editor Drew Atana, polishing and preparing listener stories for book number 6. Thank you to Molly Box, finding the first story I told this week, Olivia Lee, finding the second, and Kyler Cummins, finding the third. And we are on Facebook and Instagram where we post pics that accompany these episodes and more at Scared to Death Podcasts. Or we'll post about the Scary Wood coming up. We also have a private Facebook group, Creeps and Peepers, full of horror lovers. Big thanks to the All Seeing Eyes, who are the Creeps and Peepers moderators, and they do a fantastic job. And enjoy your nightmares, Creeps and Peepers. Hope you were scared to death.
Bye.
If spirits threaten me in this place, fight water by water and fire by fire. Banish their souls into nothingness and remove their powers until the last trace. Let these evil beings flee through time and space. Evil may pass through, but hath no home here within, scared to death.
Mad Magic Productions.
Oh, yeah, very cute.
Oh, so cute, little pumpkins.